Mama friend. Welcome to the Mama Mindset Podcast. I'm your host and creator, Amy Cothran. Welcome back if you've joined me before, and welcome if this is your first time joining me. Thank you so much for listening. I truly, truly value listeners. I truly value when you share the podcast with somebody. I love it when you tag me in it so I can see who's listening. And I love hearing from you. I love hearing about episodes that have resonated with you. I love hearing your feedback too, good and bad. I've had some amazing feedback on areas that I can improve in. And I love that truly. I know not episode is going to be for everybody. I can't please the masses and I have no desire to do so. I just want to bring you good, valuable content on a variety of different levels. And if it doesn't resonate with you, then okay. And if it does resonate with you, then the only thing that I ask is that you share it. This is absolutely free to you. It takes a lot of work, effort, and money from me to bring you this podcast and to bring you quality experts. And I just ask that you participate in the program by sharing it. It means so much to me. Sharing this with other people is how we grow. And I cannot explain to you enough how much I appreciate it and how important and valuable that is. So that being said, today's episode, I want to dive into something that I consider is one of the most limiting things that we participate in as humans. It's one of the most limiting beliefs that we participate in. And it's something that everybody does, but it's how we identify ourselves and how you identify yourself. One of the ways, we've talked about instilling healthy habits and ways to instill healthy habits and get them to actually stick, things that you're doing and not doing to create them to not stick. And one of the things that I feel like that really is a huge roadblock for us is how we identify ourselves and how you identify yourself. Our identities and how we identify ourselves is incredibly limiting. It can be incredibly growth oriented, but it can also be very limiting. So let's talk about the hot mess mom culture. Okay. If you believe you're a hot mess mom, if you continue to say that you're a hot mess mom, you will be a hot mess mom. And everything that entails, which is typically negative, which is typically a mom that needs wine to get through the day and bad food when the kids are napping and binge watching Netflix on the couch and eating a bag of Oreos all the time. Every once in a while, we do those things, is different than somebody that creates unhealthy habits out of doing that. That's not how you want to live your life. That's not going to fill you up and make you at the end of the day be like, yes, I have done my best with this life that I've been given, with this body that I've given. I have definitely treated myself in an incredibly kind way. So hot mess mom culture, super toxic. Okay. If you say, and if you identify with being a hot mess mom, somebody who never puts themselves together, who never gets off of the couch, and who never takes proactive approaches to being a homemaker, then you will be a hot mess mom. And whenever you want to take a step forward to improve your life, you're not going to be able to do so because you've now identified yourself in this other category. You've identified with these types of women. Another one that I get a lot of the times is I'm not a morning person. I just can't come up with a morning routine because I'm not a morning person. You have now boxed yourself in and identified yourself as somebody who's not a morning person. Do you see how incredibly limiting that is? You have now limited yourself to never being a morning person. Ever. Even if you wanted to, even if you thought, okay, I really, really, really like the idea of this. I see there's value in it and I don't want to try it. But because you've identified yourself as not being a morning person, you may be able to do it for one day, maybe 2 days, but you're not going to be able to have a healthy habit that sticks because you've identified yourself as somebody who doesn't do those things. So you have to change your identity. in order to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. In order to be the person that you want to be, you have to understand where your identity lies. And you have to understand that you have to change your identity and who you identify with. Who you identify with in your surroundings, your environment, on social media, all of those things, to being the person that you want to be, to identify with the types of people that you can align with. I want to be the type of person, I want to identify as somebody who communicates well with their children, not somebody who ignores their children. I want to identify myself as that person. I want to be that person. A lot of moms identify themselves and that negative self-talk as being a bad mother. I'm just a bad mother, or I'm just not a good mother, or I don't have maternal instincts. You've now boxed yourself in and completely limited who you are based on negative self-talk and how you identify yourself. Okay. And you're identifying yourself based on learned behavior or based on those limiting beliefs that come from your past. So a lot of times you feel like you're going to be a bad mother based on the fact that maybe you were raised by a mother who struggled. Okay. Maybe you don't have the best motherly role model in your life. So now you feel like you're going to be a bad mother, or you are a bad mother because of the people that you were around. That's incredibly limiting. You cannot identify yourself in that way. If you want to be a good mother, then you identify yourself as a good mother. I am a good mother. I'm going to be a good mother. I identify with somebody who's put together, who's organized, who keeps a fairly tidy house. I'm not going to say perfect because that's like non-existent, but those are things that I identify with. Working out. Okay. If you identify yourself with other people or yourself that's overweight, that is going to be your identity. If you identify yourself as somebody who takes care of their body, who is kind to their body, who wants to love their body, then you're going to make changes in your life that align with that identity. You're going to move your body. You're going to put good foods in your body. But if you identify with somebody who doesn't do those things, then you're going to limit yourself and you're never going to be able to grow. You're never going to be able to change and pivot and become the person that you want to become. So, like I said, one of the most limiting things you can do is to hold on to that identity and then let that identity absolutely consume you. So, we've talked about that. I am more than a mother. I am more than mom. That is one piece of my identity, and the importance of understanding that we have different identities and different ways that we identify ourselves is huge. It's absolutely huge, because if you identify as only a mother, as only a mom, then you limit yourself to only being able to do mom things like running the kids to practices or, changing the diapers or things like that. I can't do that because I'm a mom. Okay. I'm not able to start a business because I'm a mom. I'm a stay-at-home mom, especially that one. Okay. Stay-at-home mom. That is an identity. And we've talked about jobs, people aligning themselves and identifying themselves with their jobs. Your job is not who you are. And your role as a stay-at-home mom is not who you are. Okay. You are somebody that's interested in gardening. You're somebody that's interested in reading. You identify yourself as a reader, a gardener, a pianist, an author. You could be all of these other things. You are not just a stay-at-home mom. You cannot identify yourself as that. I know so many stay-at-home moms that are so much more than just a mom. There's so much more to us. And one of the points of this podcast, and I've talked about it a lot, is that stay-at-home moms are incredible. We are incredible, and we are not limited. We're absolutely 100% completely the opposite of limited. We have a vast, vast opportunity to do all the things and be all the things and try the different things and identify ourselves in a variety of different ways. So why are we still saying I'm a stay-at-home mom? I'm a mom. Okay. You are so much more than that. You're a human being. You are a person. And there are so many other identities to you and things that you identify with than just being a mom. Being a mother and raising your future generation, our future generation, is the most important job in the world. Yes, but it is not only who you are. You can identify yourself in other ways as well. So, identities should be small parts of who you are. They should not be all consuming. And here's the reason why, because we need to shift our identities for seasons of life, for things that come and go, for changes that happen in our lives. And if you have an identity that's all consuming, that completely consumes you, it really makes it very difficult for you to break away from that. Okay. You have to make it easy for you to let go of these different identities as needed. And if you have an identity that is your only identity and that's all you ever are, you can't let go of that. So let's go back to mom life for just a second. And I've talked about this in other episodes as well. If we only limit ourselves to being a mom, what happens when the kids move out of the house? Okay. We've now gone 18 years or more only identifying ourselves as a mom as our primary role. And then when the kids are gone, what are we left with? We've only identified ourselves as a mom, and then they don't need us anymore in the way that they needed us before. And even as they're teenagers and as they grow up and get to be more self-sufficient, even if they're living at home, if we only identify ourselves as a mom, it's very, very hard to pivot. And if you identify yourself as a mom of young children and you only envision yourself as a mom of young kids, as your kids get older, here's what happens. You continue to do things for them. You continue to treat them the way you would have treated them when they were much younger, because you've now identified yourself as a mom of young children. So I hope that makes sense to you. We want to identify ourselves with a variety of different things, not one that's all consuming, because we have to pivot. We have to change and we have to shift for things that come along, changes that come along. So we don't want to be locked into place. Okay. We want to be flexible. We want to be fluid. We want to grow and change and experiment and try new things. And, maybe for a few years, we identify ourselves as a singer. Okay. And we throw ourselves into singing, taking singing lessons. You have to identify yourself as a singer in order to become a singer. If you never identify yourself, then you're essentially kind of lying to yourself. Like, I want to try this, but I'm never really going to identify as it. Identify, own it. Say, I'm a singer. You can be a singer in progress. Absolutely. But you need to take ownership of that. Okay. I'll just use myself as an example. I identify as a gardener. Am I a great gardener? No, I have so much more to learn. There's so many things that I just wing, and I have to read the back of the seed packets 4 times. And, I change things every single year, and I definitely don't have it perfect. I'm constantly looking at other people and learning from other people, but I absolutely 100% identify myself with being a gardener. I love it. I identify myself as somebody who preserves food and grows food and provides for her family. Absolutely identify with that, because if I identify with that, it gives me the opportunity to grow more into those things. I identify myself as a baker, but do I bake bread to sell? Absolutely not. Do I still make a mess of a loaf of bread? Absolutely. But if I don't identify myself as those things, then I'm never going to become those things. I'm never going to get good at those things because I've never aligned myself with them. I've never given myself a chance to do that. It goes the opposite way too. I'll just give an example, maybe of my husband. He absolutely loves woodworking and he loves trying to build things, but he doesn't identify himself as a woodworker or a builder. And it's absolutely limiting to him. It limits him. It limits his confidence in being able to do things. It limits his determination to do things because he doesn't identify with it. It doesn't make him confident. It makes him self-conscious because he has not identified himself with that. So you could be somebody who's interested in woodworking, or you can identify as people like that, but it's like a work in progress. And you have to do that in order to make progress within your life. And he's definitely gotten a lot better. So there's just things that we say, things that we believe, and things that we do that limit us in what we're capable of doing. Here is one that really drives me freaking nuts sometimes, is the Enneagrams and the personality tests. I understand the value in them. There is a lot of value in them. I've done them. We did personality tests, the Myers-Briggs. We did all of that stuff in college. I've done the Enneagram ones. I've done many of those personality tests, and I think there is value there, but they are also limiting because you start to identify yourself with these specific boxed areas. I'm only an Enneagram 3. I'm only an Enneagram 8. And I'm saying 3 and 8 because that's me. 8 and 3, 3 and 8. I think I actually talked about Enneagrams in one of my more recent episodes, but it's so limiting. If that was the case, then I would say I'm never capable of having fun. I'm never going to be a 7 because I'm only a 3 and an 8. I've only identified with myself as a 3 or an 8. And that's bullshit. I want to have fun. I don't want to be just a 3 or an 8. The way I look at it is these are my tendencies. This is what I'm naturally drawn to, which means I need to put in a little bit more effort to be a 7 or to be some of the other things over here that I find value in and I think are incredibly important to add into my life to make a well-rounded life. So personality tests, Enneagram numbers, some of those quizzes that you do, don't allow them to be your entire identity. Sometimes it feels really safe to be boxed in. Sometimes it feels really safe to be a certain personality or a certain type of person, but don't let that be all consuming. If you identify yourself, okay, let's give this just kind of came to me and it's probably going to be super morbid, but let's give an example. You identify yourself as a photographer, but say something happens and you get really sick and you're not able to do photography anymore. Okay. Maybe you lose your eyesight. Maybe you're just incapable of taking pictures. Maybe you're a pregnant mom who's on bed rest and you can no longer go out and take pictures for a month or whatever. What is that going to do to your heart space? What is that going to do for your mental health? It's going to impact it very, very negatively. So you absolutely cannot only box yourself in to one thing. You are more than a photographer. You are more than a homemaker. You are more than a good housekeeper. Those are just small little pieces of things that you identify yourself with. Now, I just gave you some examples of some very healthy things that you identify yourself with, but there are a lot of things that you can identify yourself with that are unhealthy. By identifying yourself with things that are toxic or negative, it's also incredibly limiting and it really creates unhealthy habits. So if you identify yourself with being a wine drinker, I mean, you can do that in a really positive way. Maybe that's not the best example, but if you identify yourself with somebody that can eat an entire pizza or, just there's all of these other really toxic things. So it's going to limit you. It's going to just compound all of these unhealthy, toxic behaviors. So I really encourage you. Okay, here's your action. Here's where I want you to take some action. Do some self-reflective work. And I want you to actually write down the ways that you identify yourself, who you identify yourself as. If the very, very first thing that you write down is mom or mother, ask yourself, is that all of me? Is that the majority of me? Am I putting too much weight on that? Every single item that you write down, I want you to ask yourself in that identity, how heavily you identify yourself as that person. Okay. Because all of your different identities build up who you are. good or bad. So if you want to make some changes in your life, if you want to become the person that you envision yourself being, then identify yourself with that. Was I a podcaster in January? Absolutely not. But the minute I sat down at the table, which was a kiddie table, by the way, in a kiddie chair in my daughter's bedroom, I identified myself as a podcaster. As soon as I pushed record for the very first time, I had my microphone set up. I decided I'm going to be a podcaster. That's how I'm going to identify myself. One area of myself. Okay. It's not all consuming, but I made a decision to identify myself with that thing that I wanted to learn everything about and just throw myself into and grow to the best of my ability. But if I approached it in a way that I was like, I don't know, I'll try it, I'll see how it goes, I'm not sure, I would not be where I am today. I put myself all in and I had identified as that. Okay. I encourage you to do that. If you're interested in something, if you're interested in becoming something, if you're interested in being the person who gets up early in the morning, person that participates in yoga, then identify yourself as that person. If you want to be the person who identifies with a clean and tidy home, then do that. If you want a clean and tidy home, then identify yourself as a person who has a clean and tidy home. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not always going to have a perfectly clean and tidy home. It's completely impossible. Just let that go. But if you identify yourself with the type of person who can keep a clean and tidy home, then you'll become that person. I identify myself with the person who goes to bed at night with no dishes in the sink. I think I've mentioned that. The times that I have not accomplished the things that I want to accomplish, or I'm afraid to do the things that I want to do, is because I haven't identified myself as the person who can do those things. Okay. For example, an area that Brad and I need to work on is keeping a clean and tidy garage, keeping a tidier garage. We have come a really long ways in that. I know that just sounds like a very small, minuscule, silly thing, but it's just one example of a multitude of examples. We've come a really long ways in that. And we identify ourselves with somebody who keeps a clean and tidy garage, but we haven't always been that way. And we know as soon as it starts to get unkept, because we haven't fully embraced the fact that we are people who proactively take care of it. We're more of reactive with it still. So you can see that we still have growth, right? Brad and I still have growth. I still have growth. I still have a lot of work to do in certain areas, but we notice we're not acting in the way that we identify ourselves. And we need to work on that. We need to change that. We need to take a couple hours this weekend, sweep it out, tidy it up, and put things away. We identify ourselves with people who take care of our yard, who find value in our home. So we do that. Okay. We identify ourselves as somebody who has an Airbnb glamping, and we identify ourselves as somebody who takes a lot of pride in that, a lot of pride in hosting and taking care of people. And we've been very successful at that. But if we didn't identify ourselves with people as people who do that, we wouldn't have been successful. We identify ourselves to have a happy and healthy marriage. That is how we identify ourselves. So we work towards that. We actively work towards that. And when we're not in the flow of that, we know we need to get back in the flow of it because we're out of our identity. We're out of who we are as a couple and as an individual. So those are just some examples. I really feel like boxing yourself into one identity or two big identities is one of the most limiting things you can do. And if you're struggling to become the person that you want to become, write down who you are, identify who you are. And if you need to pivot those identities, then do that. Figure out what's limiting you with what you believe and who you believe you are. So go forth, my friend, make the positive changes that you need to make. Identify with who you need to identify with and who you are. Write those down, share them with me. Don't forget to share this with another mama friend who can find value in this. And as always, please remember that I believe in you, I care about you, and I am so incredibly proud of you. Thank you so much for listening today, sweet mama. I look forward to talking to you again soon.